responsibility of helping ensure that the survivors' stories continue to be heard. Yom HaShoah asks us to pause together as a community. It is a moment to mourn those who were murdered, to honor the strength and resilience of those who survived, and to reflect on what their experiences mean to us today. This evening, as we listen to testimony and as we witness the candle lighting, we are reminded that every story represents a life, a family, and a legacy that continues through all of us gathered here. The recollections, poetry, remarks, and music we will hear tonight remind us that even in the darkest moments, humanity's light can endure. As we reflect together, may we renew our commitment to compassion, justice, and respect to others. May this evening strengthen our resolve to remember and to work toward a world where the words "never again" truly matter. Thank you for being here to remember, to reflect, and to stand together.
A childhood torn from a boy, his voice sings of his grief, shut in a ghetto like dogs in a crate made to be less than human. To have the voice of death brush against your ears, allowing you to remember the Polish breeze you danced through as a child. Singing into the wind like sending a letter with no address. To feel the passion torn from you as life as you know is ripped from your childlike hands. Watching as the marauders stole your home, moving you into containment to make you easier to access, all at the age of 13. To know your mother and sister won't be returning, but the absence conveys your mind to believe, maybe, just maybe, you'll find them. To undergo the tragedy of hate when you so loved the world. Put on a cattle car like a circus of animals, yet you still allowed the songs of your soul to escape through your mouth, bringing peace to the flame for just a moment, because music is life. Sorted like a measly deck of cards, told how to walk, where to stand, but your voice they could not take, all at the age of 15. Later in life, you went to school, Juilliard. You put everything into that school, taking back what you had been stripped of. Then you found a city painted in black and gold, swimming in the smoke of steel, a place you could feel free and sing with every ounce of you renewed, allowing the music to bring you to life over and over again, because your voice they could not extinguish. Now you are talked of with the highest honors, someone so incredibly strong and resilient. Your voice is remembered through the lives of others, especially by those in the black and gold city you called your home. Now you dance with the wind like you did as a boy, and when we hear the wind sing songs of life, we will hear your name and remember Maush Taub. We learn about you at the age of 15.
Begin again. You rise from the nest of the bed, try to catch shards of dreams, a smile's brilliance, the color of his eyes, her hair, the warmth of his hands. Every morning, the world is created. At some time and some place, sun rises above the horizon. The sky is gray, lilac, rose, blue. Venus floats below the moon's remnant. Each day, the songs of robin, lark, cardinal begin to serenade somewhere. There is so much sorrow in this world, yours and everyone else's. The ache for your beloveds lodges in the house of grief just beside your heart. Not burden this remembering, but gift, as you sing of them, their names a river of sound.
אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין, באמונה שלמה, באמונה שלמה, בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין, בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין. אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין, באמונה שלמה, באמונה שלמה, ואף על פי שהתמהמה, עם כל זה אני מאמין, ואף על פי שהתמהמה, עם כל זה אני מאמין. אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין, באמונה שלמה, באמונה שלמה, עם כל זה אחכה לו בכל יום שיבוא, עם כל זה אחכה לו, עם כל יום שיבוא. אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין.
Please rise if you are able. El Malech Hamim Shochem Bamnomim Hametzem Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanefei HaShekhinah במעלות קדושים וג'הורים כזוהר רקיע מזהירים את נשמות כל אחינו בני ישראל אנשים נשים וטף שנטבחו ושנחלקו ושנשרפו ושנהרגו בגן עדן תהי מנוחתם. אנא בעל הרחמים הסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבותיהם. ונאמר Amen. You may be seated.
In the times of the temple, everyone was required to watch the sky. If you saw the first sliver of a new moon, you were expected to stop everything and travel to Jerusalem to inform the high court. Without proper testimony, the Jewish calendar would slide into ambiguity. So important was this responsibility that the rabbis allowed people to violate the Sabbath in order to make the journey to testify about the new moon. One year, the great Rabbi Akiva detained 40 pairs of witnesses in the town of Lod. Lod was a day's journey from Jerusalem. Surely someone much closer to the high court had already seen the same new moon and had testified to it. Should all these 80 people really violate the Sabbath just to provide seemingly redundant testimony? Rabbi Gamliel told him, "If you discourage the masses from testifying today, you will discourage individuals from testifying in the future. Once people assume someone else is testifying, they will lose the motivation needed for the arduous journey." When it comes to a matter of communal importance, we must encourage every voice. We must not discourage even one person from telling their story on the grounds that someone else may have already told it. Every story matters because every person matters. And more so, every story matters for the encouragement that it gives to the next person. We are about to watch testimonies from some of the Holocaust survivors who made a home in our community. Like all such testimonies, these contain certain truths: that horror is real, that people survive it, that survivors can reclaim their experience by telling their stories, that the stories we tell today will encourage the storytellers of tomorrow until the long-awaited day when there are no more horrors to recount.
Is there anything to be learned in going over all this and reminding the coming generations about what happened?
Yeah, I think people should
To
know
you
the
and
history
all
of what
these
happened. Right, right. Children should know, and their children should know. Whether it will prevent from happening again, it might. But on the other hand, like things happened even now, like in Cambodia. Now it's prominent in the news that the Pat Paul, whatever his name is, that he killed 2 million, something like that.
Tremendous.
And in Yugoslavia, they're killing each other. I wouldn't say that it's so simple that once you talk about it, nothing bad will ever happen. It's not that simple, but it should be. Mainly, I feel, when I was in the ghettos, many times I had people say that if one should survive, let him tell, let him talk. And I feel that we should tell and we should talk. I myself went a couple of times to schools, and I was very well received. And I admire them. I went to a place called Patton. It's about 30, 40 miles from here. There are no Jews there. You should see the reception that I got. They wrote an article about me in the Patton paper. And I got letters, and I really feel they were sincere. So yes, we have to talk about it. We have to have a museum. And was not talking about it means it will be an insult. Means, say, silence is consent. Means you, it has to happen, it happened. Let's forget about it, something like that. That's all I can say.
I decided I'm going to see if I can get together with my father. And it was it's almost a journey like to do that too, because we had to go through zones and borders, and the only thing was that on the way there were many DP camps that even though you didn't have money or food, that you could stay overnight in places like that. And so I had to go from Austria to Germany. There was a border. Then I had to go from the Russian side to the American side. It was a zone. And you had to have passports wherever you were going. And eventually I made it. It was a whole big journey, and
What sort of
people were
papers?
helping out.
What sort of papers did you
Well, it was a
use?
passport to go from the Russian zone into the American zone.
Did the Russians give you that at the camp?
Well, there were offices. There wasn't, even if there weren't Russians, sometimes Poles took care of it, in the different offices. So somehow you could help yourself. People would help you out and do it for you. Once I remember I had to cross on a barge somewhere, a river or something, and a Polish man gave me a pass for that. Then once a Russian couple took me over to I had to go to a border, and somehow he knew how to manage it, and he just took me up. And then once I had to go on a train, because the trains were full, people were going back and forth all over. And I remember a bunch of Jewish guys just picked me up and just stuck me in the train, and this is how I eventually got to Munich. When I came there, of course, you got into a camp. You find out these things on the way, and I found out there that my father wasn't in Munich anymore, that he was in Feldafing. There was a displaced persons camp. The reason he wound up there then, because he had a room with a young bunch of Pabianits boys, and they were doing some smuggling. And when the German police came in, they took them, and they took my father too, even though he didn't do anything. So after he was released, he decided to go to the camp. He didn't want to stay with them anymore. And then the reunion with my father in Feldafing was just so horrible, because he found out that both of us are alive, my sister and I. And when I came there by myself, he knew the answer. That was a very horrible reunion. But life you accept, I guess.
When the Nazis advanced on his small Lithuanian village, my dad, Leon Brett, was sent by his father on his bicycle to a cousin's in the next town, where he was imprisoned, released, sent to a work camp from which he escaped and fought with the partisan group. And one of the pictures of him with his partisans is up there. After the war, he finagled a visa to the United States and stayed with relatives and settled with relatives in Pittsburgh and established his watchmaker's trade. My mom, Sarah Brett, grew up in a well-to-do Hasidic household in a small Polish town when the war broke out. Her mother, younger brother, and younger sister were sent to Chelmno. Sarah, her father, and another sister survived the Lodz ghetto, Auschwitz, after which she was sent to Mauthausen, where she was liberated. but lost her sister to tuberculosis. After a bittersweet reunion, which she described in the video, Sarah and her father traveled to Paterson, New Jersey, to stay with family. Despite their histories, Sarah and Leon Brett were not victims. They met, married, moved to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and poured themselves into their family, ensuring an education and a future for their children and grandchildren who were their pride and joy. They recognized, as my father said, the frailty of human nature, but they told their stories to teach us not to be silent and thus complicit in injustice, and to create a better world for their children and for our children. I light this candle, we light this candle, go ahead, to honor the strength and resilience that is Sarah and Leon Brett's legacy.
Harry, what does it mean to you to be a survivor?
Well, you do the best you can do under any circumstances. You can always look back at everything what happened, otherwise you can't survive, or like some people are mentally sick.
Oh, what?
Mentally sick is a factor.
Sure.
And some people are stronger, like I was, that, you have to say, this is it.
What did you learn? What have you learned from being a survivor?
Well, I don't know how to put it. I guess to be a decent person. That's all. Be good to everybody.
Does it make you angry today for what went on in the Holocaust?
Well, sometimes, not only sometimes, you always think about it. You always dream about it.
Sure.
Even so, you tell yourself it's only a dream. Because actually, if you think about it, most of the times, you can't even believe it.
My papa, Harry Drucker, was a survivor whose story is unbelievable. Born in Liberators, Poland in 1923, Harry was one of 5 children. On the day after his 16th birthday, Hitler invaded Poland. Harry trained in Krosno to be a tailor, the skill that saved his life. After moving to the ghetto in Romanov, Harry and his brother were separated from his family, never seeing them again. Due to his tailoring skills, Harry was solely transferred to a labor camp in Modorovka to make uniforms for high-ranking Nazi officers. Near the end of the war, Harry was taken in a group of 12 tailors across the border from Poland to Slovakia. There had originally been 40 tailors from the labor camp that had 8,000 prisoners total. The 12 were the only ones to survive. When opportunity arose to escape from an unlocked door, the 12 men did and joined a partisan group which they stayed with until liberation. We light this candle for Harry Drucker who was the sole survivor in his immediate family of the Holocaust, for his parents Isidore and Genya, his 3 sisters Rivka, Rachel, and his brother Mendel. May we all remember the unbelievable.
In the morning we got the piece of bread. We came, they brought some soup to the factory. The other thing that they ridiculed us. If you had a dress with 2 sleeves normal, you can't be like a normal person. You had to give me your sleeve to put in my dress, and I give you my sleeve to put in your dress. They were sick in their minds. I don't know, even the people who worked with us, German people worked with us, they said in German, I said, was ist doch mit die Leute? Do you understand what they say? Was ist mit die Leute? Was machen sie denn mit die Mädchens? What is it with those people? What did they do to those people? Sometimes they looked in the kettle and they saw what kind of soup they brought for us. It was water with little bit vegetables. They said, how can those girls work? They don't have no food to work with. They don't have no strength to work. And about 7 o'clock, we worked about 12 hours. They brought us back to the camp. Then we get a little bit more soup, a little bit water, and we went to sleep.
What sort of barracks did you have in that
Wooden
camp?
barracks.
Were they separate beds for each person? Or?
No, there was two, I call it one on the bottom, one on the
layers.
top. Yes. And usually it was too cold because we didn't have anything to cover ourselves, and it was not mattresses. There was a straw sack. So the 2 girls, one at the top, one at the bottom, we went together. We took 1 sack and covered ourselves, and one was empty. But
you kept each other warm by sleeping one next to the other.
Yes. And God wanted us to live. I lived. I survived. I didn't fight for it. There's nothing to fight with. The only thing I had to keep is my strength in another thing.
After the war, we find out a lot of things what we didn't know what's going on. You know, when you're cut off from the world, no paper, no radio, no nothing. You don't know. You don't get in contact with people except the German, what hissed on you like a dog, and you have only us among us, and what nobody knows what. When we were on the highway, when we went to work, we find a little bit of paper, old newspaper. We find a piece, and from that piece we discussed it for hours when we came back to the camp. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And we took out all kind of things from that piece of newspaper. We imagined how the world lives.
My parents are Elka Aiken and Manuel Kolsky. I want to talk more about what their lives were like before the war. They were raised in Lodz, Poland, where as young people they went to operas, Shakespeare plays spoken in Yiddish, and dance halls. My father taught dancing in his cousin's nightclub. My mother was the only daughter in a religious family of 6 boys. All but one was murdered in the Shoah. My father was the only boy with 3 sisters. Only he survived. His cousin on his father's side survived because he emigrated to Israel before the war. My mother's younger brother had escaped to Russia, and he survived. We estimate that 100 family members perished. My mother's family were tailors, and her maternal uncles owned department stores in Poland. She had a children's clothing store of her own in an open-air mall. My father, like his father, was a Polish soldier. My grandfather had been taken as a child soldier or cantonist in the Tsar's army when he was 8 years old, serving a compulsory 25 years after turning 18. My father enlisted when the German invasion appeared imminent. The Germans captured him. He was a Polish POW. We light this candle, my son Aaron and my son Seth, in memory of my parents and the Kolsky-Klishevsky families and the Akin-Chimovich families.
You are a member of the Speakers Bureau here in Pittsburgh and get to speak to many classes very often. Is there some kind of message that you give to them?
Yes, in fact, I learned a lot from the kids. I speak to kids, and 8th grade and up, and I speak to college kids, and I speak to adult organization. The message they gave me is that before they were reading books, they had to read certain books about the Holocaust, and they did not believe what they were reading, and they did have no interest in reading books. And in fact, before I got up to speaking at school, the principal pointed out to me 2 students. They shaved heads, and he said, "That's why we want you to speak in this class." And he said, "I just want to warn you." I said, "It's okay, I'm okay." And I kept an eye on those particular 2 kids. And they behaved, they didn't fall asleep, they just listened. And usually after I'm finished speaking, and they ask questions, they didn't ask any questions. But then after the question session was over, the kids lined up and shake my hand. And here, those 2 students were at the end of the line, and they shook my hand. He said, "Well, I want to tell you something. We didn't believe anything to that, but we believe you because we thought that what happened is just long ages ago, and when you spoke to us, and you're the live witness, you went through all that, we believe you." So that I learned a lesson that even if you speak to 1,000 kids and you do something to 2 people, that to change their mind, that to believe, it's worth. But most of the schools, I speak at Catholic schools, and the kids are very well prepared, and they ask very intelligent questions. And it's very hard for me to speak, but I get the satisfaction that in 10, 20 years from now, they'll be able, if they hear their friends saying something, the Holocaust never happened, it's a lie, they will stand up and say, "It's not a lie. We heard that Holocaust survivors speak about it," and somebody will stand up for it.
I called my grandfather Zaidi, but most people knew him as Jack Sitzimer. At 15 years old, his life in Poland turned upside down, and he was forced through 6 labor camps. He survived, but his parents, 4 siblings, and many others were killed, overworked, or starved to death. After his liberation from Mauthausen, Zaidi's survival depended on the kindness of others. He and a fellow survivor walked together to the nearest town, where a kind Christian woman carefully nourished them both back to life. At 25, Zaidi arrived in the United States empty-handed. With the support of the Jewish Federation of Pittsburgh, he built a humble life and raised a family here. My Zaidi story went largely unspoken until, in retirement, he made the courageous decision to share it with hundreds of schools, churches, and synagogues. His story taught that even in dark moments, humanity and kindness can endure. He wanted his audience to recognize that standing up can be hard, but it's necessary to protect and uplift communities, even the ones we aren't a part of. We light this candle in honor of Jack, who survived, and in memory of the family we never had the chance to meet.
Did your sisters help you at that time?
There was no food anymore. She went, Edith wasn't there. And Irene, she was such a baby. She was almost 12, but she was more like a 6-year-old one, I guess. Starved. And she went out, she picked some grass, some kind of grass was growing. It was very, the summer came, spring. It was spring, but it came so early that there was some kind of weed. I don't know what it was. That she ate that, and that kept her alive.
Were you eating anything at all at that time?
Nothing at all.
Were you able to get water?
No water. They turned off the water. So the broadcaster comes, throw her out. She's dead. She's going to be dead in 24 hours. I said, Irene started to cry. Please don't throw her out. She helped the other. She helped your sister. Didn't she wash her when she was sick, and didn't she take care of her? I did. And please don't throw her out. We cannot have dead bodies here. She's not dead yet. And I said to my sister, I hardly could talk. You know what? I might outlive her, if God willing. I'm very sick, but I'm not going to die. She said, please don't die. Don't leave me alone, because you die, I'll die. Everybody's dead here. See the 4 sisters in next to us. They're all dead. And you won't die. I said, no, I'm not going to die. And then...
What saved you?
I had a dream. You believe in dreams? I don't know. I had a dream that my dad came, and he says, I said, Dad, he said, don't give up, my daughter, my sweet daughter, don't give up. Live. And he said, look what I brought you. He said, I brought you a bottle of milk. Go and drink it, my honey. Drink it, daughter. My dearest daughter, drink it. That was his favorite. Drink it. I said, okay, Daddy, I'm going to drink it. Oh, that is Easter. It tastes so good. I'm drinking. And you know what? My fever broke. And I said, you know what? I heard you talking. You said, that is Easter. It's so good. Every word what I said, she repeated. And you know what? My fever broke. And then, slowly, I started to get a little bit better.
We light this candle this evening in memory of our mother and grandmother, Ilona Weiss, a woman whose courage, resourcefulness, and unbreakable Jewish spirit carried her through the darkest chapter of our people's history.
Taken from her small Hungarian village in a cattle car to Auschwitz,
were my grandparents, 5 uncles, most of her cousins and aunts died and were murdered. I say died, but they were murdered. She was then moved around and eventually ended up in Bergen-Belsen, which some of you may have heard of because that's where Anne Frank died. She was liberated from Bergen-Belsen, a horrible place. You can see the movies of them bulldozing bodies, the piles of bodies around. But even after that, after she was liberated, her sisters, her cousins who were survived, were put in DP, displaced person camps. They remained in those camps. She remained in a displaced person camp for 5 years. 5 years after liberation, across Europe, sometimes behind barbed wires with nowhere to go. My mother survived, and then by luck or fate, she met her husband, my dad, Joseph, who was named Joseph Weiss, which was the same name as her father. And she thought it was her dad, but it wasn't. And he ended up being my dad. So she found a sponsor, cousins here in the United States, and they sponsored her to come to the U.S. But she always advised me, survival alone is not enough. It was not enough. You don't forget what statelessness cost our family. She believed without question that Jews must never again be stateless, defenseless, or dependent on the goodwill of others for safety.
My grandmother built a family rooted in that truth, living openly, proudly, and unapologetically as Jews. Her commitment to her family, her Jewish faith, and to the world's only Jewish state never wavered. Yom HaShoah calls us to remember, but also to reckon. The lessons of the Shoah are both a memorial and an instruction. Today, as anti-Semitism rises again, in both new and familiar forms, we recall our promise to my grandmother. We will not be silent. We honor her by declaring that we are not Jews with trembling knees. We stand firmly, we stand proudly in who we are, and we carry forward the responsibility that she has entrusted to us.
If you were able to talk to the younger generation, what would you want them to know about?
Most likely, the notion that you shouldn't take your life for granted, that it is today what it is and it's going to be the same tomorrow, that you shouldn't be naive and believe that tomorrow isn't going to be more difficult or challenging, and you should sort of not only be prepared for it, but try to do something about it. And particularly I'm thinking about, when my parents decided to first leave Germany, then leave Italy, they didn't have to. I mean, it wasn't like they were, they were able to read into the situation and to say things are not going to get any better. So that today, I think probably many younger people have a comfortable life, which is perfectly fine, but I don't think they spend too much time in speculating about what is going to be like tomorrow, and also being sensitive enough to say that there are other opportunities that one should pursue and not necessarily wait for danger.
Smart, very wise. What does resilience mean to you with your experience?
what I'm experiencing right now. I think that part of the notion that you should, I mean, the word survivor presumes all kinds of things, and you can be a survivor which has nothing to do with the Holocaust, nothing to do with history. Simply on a day-to-day basis, you want to make sure that what you have can be expanded, that you should try to take time to take inventory of what you do, what you don't do, what you should do, and then act on it.
I light this candle for the survivors and their families whose resilience and forethought are the living proof that hate did not win. Their families and their stories, of which I'm a participant, are our bridge to the future. I light this final candle as a pledge. We commit ourselves to a world with no room for bigotry or violence, transforming our memory into action.
As we turn to pages 11 and 12, they're finding words of the mourner's Kaddish. I invite you to rise as you are able. As together we affirm, Yit Gadol V'Yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma Divrach Hirutei V'Amlich Malchutei B'Chayei Yomechon V'Chayei D'Chol Beit Yisrael Ba'Gala V'Zman Kariv V'Imru Amen Yehei Shemei Rabbah V'Varach Le'alam L'Amei Al-Maya Yitbarach V'Yishtabach V'Yitpa'ar V'Yitromam V'Yitnaseh V'Yithadar V'Yitalev V'Yithalal Shemei D'Kudsha B'Richu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata Tushbechata V'Nechamata Damiran Be'alma V'Imru Amen Yehei Shalama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. You are welcome to be seated.
When Stanley and Lucia Eagle decided to flee the Przemysl ghetto in Poland, they needed help
from the non-Jewish community. Stanley approached the Catholic Bishop of Przemysl to request a falsified baptismal document for Stanley and Lucia's 18-month-old daughter. And the bishop chose to ignore one of the sacraments of his faith to protect a child. A Catholic couple hid the child for nearly 2 years and then allowed Stanley and Lucia to live with them after liberation. Other non-Jewish people in the area were part of the resistance movement, which provided food, clothing, and shelter for the Jewish people who were hiding in the woods and sabotaging the Nazis' efforts. When one couple was denounced for hiding Jewish people in their barn, they were arrested and interrogated by the Gestapo for 2 weeks. When they refused to reveal the location of the Jewish people or the names of the others in the resistance, Michael was hanged in the town square with a sign around his neck warning people of a similar fate. His wife, Katarzyna, died in a concentration camp, leaving behind 4 children. They were recognized in 1995 as righteous among nations. The Nazi officer, Albert Battelle, who helped Stanley, Lucia, and others escape the ghetto, was recognized as righteous among the nations in 1981. The risks and sacrifices made by these individuals and others throughout Nazi-occupied countries show us who we can be if we choose to do what is right. May we always remember their strength and compassion. I light this candle in their honor and memory.
This was written by Eli Heimberg, Assistant Chaplain of the 42nd Infantry Division, United States Army. On April 29, 1945, after a battalion of the 222nd Infantry Regiment helped liberate Dachau, I entered the camp with Chaplain Bonin. Chaplain Bonin announced in Yiddish, "Ich bin ein Amerikaner Rabbiner." At that moment, it was as if all the pent-up emotions of the years in misery were unleashed in that room. There was a burst of wailing and crying. We stood there for a moment, unsuccessfully trying to control our emotions as the victims surged forward to kiss our feet and hug our hands. I felt humble and uncomfortable, for it was I who should have been hugging and kissing them. For a long time, we took their names and messages to send to their families who were in the United States. In memory of those who had not survived, Chaplain Bonin recited the El Malay Rahamim, the memorial prayer for the departed. I wept unashamedly. Before leaving, our one thought was to reassure our brethren that they were not forgotten and that aid was on the way. Despite the horrors of the Holocaust, a new spirit arose among most of the survivors. From out of the ashes of despair, I witnessed the resurgence of a people taking their place once more in society, retaining their compassion and a continuing will to learn and pursue their culture. We light this candle tonight to honor Assistant Chaplain Rabbi Eli Heimberg and all the other brave and compassionate liberators of the Holocaust.
Words of Jerome Yellen, 78th Fighter Squadron, U.S. Army Air Forces. There were 16 million of us, young men and women in the military, and the country was at war. We had Rosie the Riveters building airplanes all across the country. There was gas rationing and food rationing. It was a united effort. Tom Brokaw called us the greatest generation. We aren't necessarily the greatest generation. We just had a war we had to fight against tyranny. Japan wanted to be the rulers of the Pacific, and Hitler wanted to control the world in Europe. Two tyrants, Tojo and Hitler. When we mentioned the war, we talked about the war in Germany, not the war against the Germans. It was the war against Hitler. And the war in Japan was the war against Japan, against the country. In January 1941, Franklin Roosevelt made a speech in Congress called the Four Freedoms Speech. The four freedoms are freedom of expression and speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. And that's what we fought for, to keep that spirit alive. And then, after the war, after the bombing, after the killing, after all that was done, Americans rebuilt Japan and Germany into the democracies that have become our allies and our friends. I light this candle for Jerome Yellen and the millions of Allied veterans who valiantly served.
This selection comes from the book, The Survivor, An Anatomy of Life in the Death Camps by Terence Desprez, an English professor at Colgate University. In this foundational book, Desprez analyzes over 80 survivor testimonies and reflects on their resilience. He wrote, "But if faith in humanity is no longer possible, what then is the point of bearing witness? Silence is the only adequate response, but the pressures of the scream persist. The conflict between silence and the scream is in fact a battle between death and life, between allegiance to the dead and care for the living, which rages in the survivor and resolves itself in the act of bearing witness." He adds, "Silence in its primal aspect is a consequence of terror, of a dissolution of self and world that once known can never be fully dispelled. But in retrospect, it becomes something else. Silence constitutes the realm of the dead. It is the palpable substance of those millions murdered, the world no longer present, that intimate absence of God, of man, of love, by which the survivor is haunted. In the survivor's voice, the dead's own scream is active. This is the primary source of the will to bear witness. The survivor allows the dead their voice. He makes the silence heard." I light this candle for Holocaust survivors.
For Abe Salem and Moshe Baron. Never say that you now go on your last way, though darkened skies may now conceal the blue of day, because the hour of which we've hungered is so near. Beneath our feet the earth shall thunder, we are here. From land of palm trees to the far-off land of snow, we shall be coming with our torment, with our woe. And everywhere our blood has sunk into the earth, shall our bravery, our vigor blossom forth. We'll have the morning sun to set our day aglow. Our evil yesterday shall vanish with the foe. But if the time is long before the sun appears, then let this song go like a signal through the years. This song was written with our blood and not with lead. It's not a song that summer birds sing overhead. It was a people amidst burning barricades that sang this song of ours with pistols and grenades. So never say you now go on your last way, though darkened skies may now conceal the blue of day, because the hour for which we've hungered is so near. Beneath our feet the earth shall thunder, we are here. Sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg, Gott Himmeln bleiene verstellen bläue Tag. Kommen wett nach unser ausgebänkte Schau, Sveta Poikton unser Trott mir seinen da. Von grünen Palmenland bis weißen Land von Schnee, wir kommen an mit unser Pein, mit unser Weh. Und wo gefallen ist a Spritz von unser Blut, sprotzen wird dort unser Gwurre, unser Mut. Es wird die Morgensonn begilden uns dem Heind, und der Nächten wird verschwinden mit dem Feind. Nur euch versammeln wird die Sonne in dem Kajor, wie a Parol gehen das Lied von Dor zu Dor. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. Es ist nicht kein Liedl von a Vogel läuft er frei. Das hat a Volk zwischen fallendig gewend. Das Lied gesungen mit na Ganes in de Hand. Da sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Gott Himmeln bleiene verstellen bläue Tag. Kommen wird doch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Sveta Poikton unser Trott mir seinen da.
Our work of remembrance and efforts to teach about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism extend beyond this evening and occur year-round. Please check out our website to see our upcoming events, and 3 upcoming programs are listed in your booklet as well. If you're interested in becoming involved in the Generations community, please let us know. And we hope you will join us after the commemoration for cookies in Erin Court. We have art that'll be on display from the Waldman Art and Writing Competition. And I want to thank you all for being with us tonight. A couple of notes before we close is, one, I want to acknowledge that Aubrey was here this evening to read her poem. That was obviously Aubrey and not her teacher, Melissa, so thank you for being here. And finally, we did receive notice, this is just an update, that there are 4 cars that are parked on Devonshire directly across from the parking lot that are in the fire lane. So if you think you might have parked your car there, we need you to move it and then come back into the reception. So with that, our evening is concluded, and I really thank you all for being here, and thank you to the families for coming and participating.